Hello, everybody. This is James Diboe on Disovering Season 4, dedicated to original people. And today we got a special guest in. It's Terrence Small, who's going to be interviewing myself. So I'm going to pass the mic over to him. This is the special edition. He's going to be doing a slideshow and much more. When you see Eugene Adams, this is a man who I talked about him on Chase's podcast, Big Condo, the return one. And we mentioned about a guy called Eugene Adams, and he was speaking about the Black Buddha of Asia. And he was saying in 2020, which is gone, that's when the future Buddha will return. Okay. The Mani people of Thailand now. I've visited the Mani, Indigenous black peoples of Thailand. There's only around about 300 people left. They reached Thailand around about 40,000 years ago. The All Africans of Asia, they're the first peoples that left Africa and reached Thailand. More pictures of the Mani people. The Mani tribe are spiritual people living in harmony with nature. The semi-nomadic peoples, the Mani tribe, use blowguns to hunt the prey. They have become a minority in their own country due to invasions. They have declined in numbers throughout history. They built huts made out of bamboo, leaves, roofs made out of bananas. And also they would hunt different types of animals to consume different vegetables and fruits also. Dealing with the Mani. The blowpipe, I use the blowpipe myself. This is what they use to kill tigers, monkeys, and those kind of things. Yeah. Okay, the Mani there. When visiting Thailand, this is my experience I'm speaking of. I had to get 2 different buses, 7-hour drive, reached there in the night time, stayed in a local hut in the forest. I was equipped with torches that they gave me, and I was greeted to be introduced by the chiefs, spiritual connection, most definitely. I always say that. The Mani tribe are familiar with many different medicinal herbs. They have moved through out of the year due to wars and natural disasters. For example, floods. You get a lot of floods there. The many are in secluded areas, the rainforest, and they're definitely in fear of becoming extinct. Okay. Another tribe I visited, the Orange Asli of Malaysia. Okay, the Orange Asli tribe. Yeah, they are the first people of Malaysia. The Orange Asli tribe means original people, dedicated to original people. The Orange Asli tribe speak an Austro-Asiatic language. That is an Austronesian connection where it's spoken throughout of part of the Pacific, part of Southeast Asia, part of Taiwan, and you might get some dialects out of the Chinese, because you understand Chinese has about 50 odd dialects or something, doesn't it? So, yeah, they used the blowpipe anyway to hunt the prey. 75,000 to 40,000 years ago, they say they reached Thailand. Maybe it was even before that. We don't know, So let's not just take it literally every date we see. The Orange Asli, okay, they are the spiritual people. They are believed in a supreme being once again. The forest is their home, and they have gained knowledge passed down from their ancestors or oral traditions. They believe every living thing has a soul. They believe good and evil spirits can get into the environment, for example, water, and manipulate humanity. The longest canopy in the world that me and Daniel walked on. Wow. I think it was about, what was it? In feet, about 131 feet high. Length was at least 500 meters. 500 meters, and it was the scariest.
How long has it been up for?
Well,
is it old?
It's old, but I wonder if it's been modernized in any way. But I could hear like the cracks when you're walking. Oh, come on now. But there's a rule: you can't just walk too fast, because the person in front of you, there's a person behind you, and you've all got to keep a big distance. So on each, when you reach the other beam, you'll have only 3 years can be on it from beam to beam. Then when you reach the next beam, 3 people again. It's you can't just be. Some people are getting too excited, and you better slow down, man. Our life's on the line here. But I wouldn't. I've done it once, and I don't think I need to do it again. I've done it. Someone else's turn now.
Yeah.
According to the scientists who migrated out to Africa, 100,000 years ago, some spread into the Arabian Peninsula and around the Indian subcontinent, eventually arriving to Malaysia. Before moving to Indonesia, Australia, genetic studies, Malaysia, Orange Asli date back to at least 42,000 years to 63,000 years ago. Like I said, could be more, we don't know. After settling in Malaysia, they adapted to the jungle where living almost undisturbed for thousands of years. This makes them the Orange Asli, original people, dedicated to original people. Okay, the Philippines, the Aeta people who I encountered as well, very spiritual people once again, and they're all a related group. So once you understand someone is a related group, and this is Northern Luzon, you know, these are the earliest inhabitants, you know. More people of the Aeta mining, you know, you get all these illegal loggers going in and they're just basically trying to just take every last little resource or anything from them, and there's no one really protecting them. You know, they don't get no protection from people, you know. And these are their, hunter-gatherer adaptations, you know. Communities surviving often. They have this knowledge about tropical forests, you know, typhoons, which, lucky I didn't encounter any there. You know, seasonal weather, so sometimes they do have to move from place to place. And one of their very important is skilled in storytelling, is an art. They look at that's very important. If you're a storyteller, you got to be a good storyteller. You know, when you all sit around the fires and telling good stories. Yeah, different views on dominant character of the Aeta religion. Those who believe they are monotheistic argue that various Aeta tribes believe in a supreme being who rules over lesser spirits or deities with the Aeta. Worshipping Apo Na, Aetas are animist. You know, this area I went to, Pinatuba, as well. Aeta people believe in environmental spirit. They believe that good and evil spirits inhabit the environment, such as spirits, river, sea, mountain, sky, hill. And it's just similar to the other peoples. It's like repeating the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, this part of Indonesia called Flores, underrated type of place. It's a little island. Now, if you see Indonesia, it's at the bottom, a little tiny island. You won't even notice it on that map. But these people, these are surviving indigenous black people. Flores, more than 90% of them people are Catholic and all that, but they do have certain ones who practice their ancient beliefs. Traditional beliefs of settlement in the central part of the island, a supreme creator god, you know, and obviously ancestral worship. Massive celebrations are held at the priest to sacrifice buffaloes, and very, very interesting because these are very on a tiny little island. It's like they're not even looked at like other Indonesians, you know. Distribution, handicrafts of such carving metal workings, and you can see what the diets are, what these survive and stuff, you know. But I'd like to go that part. I didn't go that part of Indonesia. I went to other parts, not that one though. Because it's got thousands of islands. So that's what I'm always saying for original people, anywhere I'm going, original peoples. Maluka Islands. Now, Maluka is another island in Indonesia. These are where the black peoples are, but they kind of separate them. It's the same in West Papua, and they treat them like just really low, you know what I'm saying? So that's why we've got to look out for one another. Cambodia. Okay, Cambodia now. Angkor Wat, I remember I'm looking for the darker skinned Cambodians. So these are like close to the Khmer people. Oh, amazing. I went to visit the Bayon temples in Cambodia. And if you look at the faces on them, these are the carvings of like, I'd say more definitely a melanated peoples. I'm looking at the lips, I'm looking at the noses. And that's, you know, definitely an African connection. Now, when we say African connection, I'd believe African, definitely indigenous black people or African people. But the same story with the Olmecs, isn't it? You know, that you have the indigenous black people, then later on they want to build stuff off the Africans because of the knowledge we brought in and stuff. Angkor Wat, spectacular. It's a must if you go to Cambodia. You need to go see and reap. And these trees are visited as well. I thought these trees were amazing. They're like the tree of life, you know, sacred trees. You know, and this tree, one of the Tomb Raider movie, one of the trees on that in Siem Reap, I thought they're just like coming from the sky or something. You know, yeah. Okay, Vietnam. They are the civilization called the Champa civilization. The way you have the Khmer people in Cambodia, and remember, like Vietnam, a lot of countries are New borders are created now, isn't it? So it's hard to like discuss that. Champa people. There's fairly few civilizations, as you can see it there. There's Vietnam, and then around is like what we know now as Cambodia. Okay, now the original people of China, right? Chancellor Williams, for example, in his classic Destruction of the Black Civilization, noted ancient China and the Far East, for example, a special area, like I was saying before, in African research. How do we explain such a large population of blacks in southern China, so powerful, enough to form a kingdom of their own? I remember reading that book, and that book was one of the best books I've read. Original Chinese skeletal remains from that area, Hobart, well, I can't even say the words, found in southwest China, bear oceanic negroid features. So when they're digging these skulls up, they're recognizing they don't look mongoloid, they're looking like oceanic, meaning the black people are Papa, and negroid as in African people. So we one and the same. And you see, we were talking about the Batwa people when we were dealing with Africa. Well, Central Africa also, these people, we're connecting these people up, as you can see. Andaman Islands, the short people, diminutive, meaning the small. Historical periods, presence of, these are known in China as black dwarfs, they were called. And in 250 AD. Now, there's talks that they exterminated the short peoples. That's what they were doing. You know, Shang Dynasty. Now, some people believe that the Shang Dynasty is the first dynasty of China, where there's one that not many people talk about, and that's the Xia, which goes into like 2000 odd BC, 2000.
It's supposed to be part mythical, that's why they don't really know if it's real or not or something.
So we usually work with the Shang, which is not a problem. So as you can see, the Shang's 1766 to 1027 BC. Now you'll see on there, see the Zhao dynasty. Now when the Zhao, conquering Zhao, this was who we call the Mongoloid, they were conquering the indigenous black people from the Shang dynasty, pushing them from the north more down into the south, and then eventually being absorbed. You know, that's what happens. You get absorbed. Japan, you know, many Africans, you know, including, are amazed by the large number of words. Now, the linguistics. I mentioned this the first podcast to come on about linguistics, tying Asian linguistics to Africa. It's so the evidence is there strongly.
So you mean, you know, the languages they're speaking over there, you can tell they're connected to the African languages?
Certain words that they use, even some words in the South Pacific, the word Tonga, for example, that name Tonga is a word. I don't know if it's Zambia, I think Zambia or Zimbabwe. It's a place called Tonga. They have, okay, the Jomon people. So when we think about the first people who went to Japan, we've got to deal with the Jomon people. And these are hunter-gatherers, you know, these were similar to the people in the Andaman Islands that first entered Japan. 12,000 years ago, they say, maybe 16,000 years ago. And these are all like a related group, but these are modern Japanese, that you can see. It's not a long time ago, this. And you can see some people have that trace in them. The black samurai in Japan. Yeah. So, as you can see, they're described him as a slave who arrived in Japan in 1579 and became the first black samurai. Now, that would have been the Portuguese, you know, bringing people over, and also Portuguese were in partnership with Arabs as well, bringing African slaves. Amazing place, got to get there. Andaman Islands. Now, you might see 26,000 years ago, but these have been in this place for some of the longest times in Asia, some of the people, because they're so isolated. They've been isolated for thousands, possibly 40,000 years. We don't know, you know what I'm saying? And it's only in the last 200 years and 300 years that people have started interfering with the life and that. You know, they were living in peace. And they're becoming extinct, you know, they're becoming a minority. Now, out of the Andaman Islands, you get names like Jarawa. That's like tribal names that they're given and that. Jarawa people. So I definitely would like to go and visit these people. I was actually meant to visit them in 2017 when I was traveling around Asia. I didn't have enough time because I was told that you need permission of India to go there. and you have to go there from India. You can't go from anywhere else. You know, these are just pure Africans, if you can see. They don't look like they mixed with a single person since they left Africa. And that's what's so amazing. Okay, India. Now, this is a great area where Ranok Rashidi has really put some mega work into India. You know, I know he got banned from there after his third trip. Rashidi claimed that the Dravidians and the Sidi of ancient India are part of a black race. He claimed 3,500 years ago the Dravidians had technologically advanced society well known in the ancient world. The black Dravidian portrayed their god as blacks and portrayed evil beings as white skin. He claims the Aryans were barbarians, whites who enslaved the indigenous black Dravidians in the caste system after they stole the advanced technology of the Dravidians 3,500 years ago. Now, what that is, is somebody is trying to challenge Ranok Rashidi. So what he's trying to do is that you're going to get this all the time. People will always refute African history. It doesn't matter if they're doing it for their own good or they're just not knowledgeable. You know, so I will look at both, but I won't. Everything he says is backed up. So whether a person wants to challenge him, we know about the aliens. You can go to Sri Lanka, well, not Sri Lanka, you can go to India, or you could speak to Indians who might know about these things. Maybe some Indians don't know about it. And I've found that everywhere, not everywhere, every place you go, some people do not know. I've been in places where people don't even know there's indigenous people in their country. You know, so it's good to be challenged anyway. You know, Dravidians. And Dravidians, you know, they entered India about before the Indus Valley civilization, and the people mixed with the local people. Then later on, that's what's called Dravidians, the mixed ones. Buddha, you know, all the Buddhas I've seen in Asia, I'm always looking for the oldest Buddhas, and the oldest Buddhas always have African features. The newer ones are different. This part of India is these are interesting places like Orissa, places like Tamil Nadu. More south of India, that's where you're going to see these types. You'd also have the Australoid type, what they say. When we say Australoid, you know what they consider people in Australia, because they have so many different ethnicities in India. If you really focus just on India, you're going to come across a lot of things. Like, that's how I got onto, there was a migration 4,000 years ago that went to Australia from India, mixing with the local people. You know, India, look at the face. I mean, how could you not say these are not black people? I mean...
So are these Dravidian from the south?
I would say these are before Dravidians, because Dravidian look is the looser hair, but it can be curly to straight. Now, I'm looking at, they look like she could be more closer to the Andaman Islands people. Now, here's a bunch of people I met in Sri Lanka, the Vedda people. Vedda. Now, the Vedas, I wouldn't say the Vedas are the first that entered Sri Lanka. I'd say they're the second wave. First wave, like the Andaman Islands people. Solid, strong African features. Small. These are small in stature, but these would have been a second wave that... It's like when people left Africa, yeah. Say when people are heading towards India, then some people decide to go to India, some people decide to stay in Iran. Yeah, so let's focus on the ones who stayed. Maybe like 10,000 years later or 20,000 years later, those ones that stayed, their generation, maybe, we're going to go into India now. So then it's like newer waves kind of change the faces of people, or... Sometimes, if you look how big India is, it's a massive country, subcontinent. So these people, the Vedas, they're believed to have a relation with the Aboriginal Australians. That's another interesting thing. But you got different type of Aboriginal Australians. Yeah. So they believed that the spirit of their dead would hunt them, bringing forth diseases and, you know, all sorts of very spiritual people, and they believe in all kinds. He looks like, you look like a black man, even though his hair's looser. But they look a bit like some Pacific Islanders, these. No, we're just looking at them. But they are a related group to some of them. The Australoids of India. Tamils. Now, I'm quite good where, like, I kind of figured out people's looks and that. I can tell that's a Tamil. Now, Tamils would be closer to Dravidian. They look similar to Dravidian Tamils. Okay. Elamites. So, Iran. So, I'm looking at Africans of Iran. Now, are these the descendants of the first peoples of Iran, or are these caught up into the slave trade? Well,
Probably
I'm not
both.
just going to just... Yeah, it'll be both, like you've just said. But looking at the depictions of the Elamites, they're looking like black people. Looking at the beards, curly. The hair, curly, you know, like to afro. So what would have happened to these? These would have been absorbed into the Indo-European migration, the invasion, just like they were invading a lot of places. Persia, look at like the depictions of a lot of African people. Africans in Iraq, you know, people don't think of black people in Iraq, but
I remember you put a book up. Do you remember what that book was called about the slave revolt in Iraq?
Oh, very important one. Yeah.
It's not well known, but it looked like an interesting topic. Literally a slave revolt like the one in Haiti, but in Iraq.
Yeah, it was between the 3rd to the 8th century or 3rd to 9th century. You know what? I wish I would have showed that book. Very important, so underrated.
No.
And this is one of the biggest slave rebellions in the world at that time. Saudi Arabia, people ask, oh, what colour were the original Arabs? You know, black peoples. Now, some of them might have mixed with people, just like people do mix. So, you know, these are like indigenous peoples who they don't like to show. Original Arabs. Now, the name there, Vedda, original Arabs, you know, and they would just come from like East Africa, North Africa, whatever part of Africa. Yemen, indigenous peoples of Yemen. We've got to know our location where our people are. We've got to know. Palestine. You know, black people, constantly. Now we're going to go to the next, we're going to go into Australia and the Pacific now. Have you got any questions you want to ask before we go into...
I was just going to say on the Palestinian ones, there's supposed to be black families, African families that have been there for thousands of years. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah.
Maybe a community of about 20,000 now, but starts off as a couple of families, but they've been there for so long.
What date are you...
This is supposed to go back to the times of Jesus, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And they've been in and around, but...
Times of Jesus.
This is how long they're saying Africans have been in Palestine for. Maybe even before, isn't it? But this is the time that they go from. This is, you know...
Yeah, well...
They always start at a point, don't they, that they just arbitrarily...
Well, let's deal from just historical records and like... Of course, people are going to leave there from Egypt. It's right next door, isn't it? So Egyptians would have always been going in there. And who are the Egyptians? They're Nubians, Cushites. So let's say later on where we deal with more modern times where people like, remember the two lands are separate. During these times, this is where we're getting this thing from outsiders wanting to come in, whether trade, whether invade. They know what they're doing, and we're just so good-hearted people as Africans, where we fall for people's nature. We believe that they want to join the brotherhood, and that's how people knew they could connect to Africans. You know, so Aboriginal Australians now, 200,000 years ago, Homo sapien developed in Africa. So 70,000 years ago, a group of African people moved into Asia, probably through the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt, or they also can cross through the Red Sea. You need to mention that as well. So they say about 65,000 years. Some say 40, different dates got to Australia. And the Australian Aborigines, very spiritual people, just like Brother Ranok Rashidi, believes that they're one of the most spiritual people on the planet. And if you look at the indigenous people, religious and spiritual beliefs are derived from a sense of belonging to a land, a sea, to other peoples, the one culture, they determine the dream and connecting to the land. And basically, it's just connecting to Mother Earth, isn't it? We could see God through nature. We don't have this.
So they don't do monotheism.
They might be. Well, when we say monotheism,
it's more like spirituality or something.
I'd say more spirituality. But you can maybe you decide to call this thing you're practicing a religion. it's up. I don't know. It's like I'm not with the religion because I feel religion kind of. We can only have a limitation on our life. You know, I feel like a bit of a limitation. How did Aborigines communicate? The Aborigines did not have a writing system. All their history I learned passed down by the stories, through the art, storytelling, ways of older generations taught the younger. Art included cave and bark painting, dot and body painting. Aboriginal used symbols to represent their natural surroundings. And as you can clearly see, black people. Now, some Aborigines might have straight hair, but so what? This is what Ranoko Rashidi was saying. Like, we can't just say that because this is what an African should look like, for example.
No, that never works.
Yeah. Some of the ancestors were men and women, while others were plants and animals. Some were even element. The ancestors moved across the land, and their paths created the dreaming tracks, songlines, which linked the whole land and people together. The ancestral being shapes the land, created mountains, rivers, and also animals, plants, people. Some changed to objects, earth, and now sacred. And I just love relating all these peoples around the world to show that we didn't all just think different in ancient times. We were a lot more in common back in the day than now. Aboriginal spirituality, supreme being called the Great Spirit, the understanding of God. They believe in animism, which holds the highest things have a soul, of course.
And that's from Africa, isn't it?
It's from Africa. So what we've got to ask ourselves, why can't we just believe spirituality started in Africa, and when people migrated, they took it with them?
Yeah.
That is easy. But like I say, you've got to think from an African mind to solve puzzles. You can't just always look at a scientist, what he says. You got to use your African mind, and our African mind takes us into the 6th dimension and higher. European, it keeps you in the 3rd dimension.
Yeah.
That's all you got to know. Frequencies, Tasmania. Now, this is a little island that you can see under Australia, and there might be some of the last these are the last full-blooded pictures. They're exterminated. So Tasmania, Aboriginal people, the last, and exterminated by the British.
Yeah.
Okay. Look at the last of these people. And we always have to see him to find them in black and white pictures, and, I don't know where we found him. Like, he's last surviving populations. New Zealand now. Now, the more you go back in New Zealand, you see they were more darker skinned. Maoris. And the dates they give New Zealand is very late, 1300 AD. Now, they deal with Hawaii like a little similar to this, where Hawaiians have a story of there was people there before them, black dwarfs. These also have a story where there was people there before them. So, and then there's something that's really trying to, I don't know why they want to suppress so bad. Anyway, not just Africa, they'll suppress. It's about suppressing dark-skinned people, because by suppressing dark-skinned people, you're suppressing the original people who brought the original teachings.
Yeah,
that's what it's about, destroying originality. Any Johnny come lately, I don't think they're as important of the original. Black Maori people, because you like to show the lightest Maoris. So I'm showing you the darker skinned Maoris. Religious chant, prayers calling on spiritual powers, covering every aspect of creation in the heart of Maori spirituality, working as means of making Maori vision reality. Yeah. That's one thing. I met a lot of Maoris. I haven't been to New Zealand, but I need to go. But they're very, very spiritual people. And decent people, a lot of them. Okay, every part of creation, tapu. Every part of creation is linked with the spiritual powers. All tapu comes originally from the supreme being. The highest expression of tapu is found in people acknowledging the tapu of people is done, recognizing their dignity as human beings created by God. So that's how they measure things on. Papua New Guinea, Melanesia. Now, Melanesia, the name, the Black Islands. That's what it means, Melanesia. Where you have Polynesia, the many islands. Micronesia, the small islands. Now, the Lapita culture, this is what I've seen in Fiji. It spread from Melanesia areas, historians, believe that the waves of settlements in Papua New Guinea, 15,000 to 10,000 to 8,000, totally untrue. More like 40,000 years ago, you can find other sources, and probably even earlier than that. Central, Eastern, South Pacific. So the voyaging, we know that these were seafarers, the Polynesians, the Melanesians, the Micronesians, all of them were seafarers. And the pottery, this is what they used to spread into other parts of the Pacific. Okay, the first settlers, 50,000 to 60,000 years ago, as you can see, the dates are coming higher now, moved into many islands, Southeast Asia, first Aboriginal people of the subcontinent of Australia, New Guinea, because the sea levels was low. There was a time when it was joined, Australia and New Guinea, you could walk, so that's very interesting. Lapita people, Papa, yeah. Scientists say 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, a people identifiable cultural tradition extended human resettlement northeastern Melanesia to the New Caledonia, Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga. Austronesian peoples. Okay, Melanesian. Austronesian peoples, though, had distinctive linguistics, scientists of the language. Austronesian peoples were the original ancestors of the Polynesian peoples. Polynesian colonization began about 3,000 years ago. So, yeah. Very important man, Benny Wender. Really sad what this man's gone through, being standing up for West Papua. They've locked them up in jail. They've killed people in front of him, his families. They really treat them bad. So he's escaped the country, and he reached out to Africa. And Africa, the first place that supported him was Senegal. They brought him in, and he, really sad his story. And he felt, I've got to call on Africa. I don't know who to call on. And he calls on Africa, which he should, there'll be African people. Spiritual leaders believe that masks and dances were the way to connect with the spirit world and control the spiritual, physical world around them. By dancing into being, the spirit men had the chance to increase their chances of survival. So this is really deep. I mean, you got a picture if you're in like a forest, certain environments. If you're, if you just was to stay in some rainforest by yourself, you do it your first night, it's a little scary. I only done like one night in the hut or something, but that was, you can kind of like, it's hard to sleep because you're thinking of things. Okay, you got to be relaxed. You got to be at unity if something's coming to hunt you, like a tiger or a snake or whatever, you got to have a team to all destroy it, come together, so. Solomon Islands. Now, people are fascinated with the blonde hair of the Solomon Islands. And it's natural. It's not dyed. Yeah. So you can look at, like, these migrations of some of these Pacific Islanders and that. The piece of culture, yeah, spreading into there again. There's the symbolism and all that. Yeah, more just natural blondes. People would think that they dyed their hair. No, they didn't. Vanuatu, part of Melanesia. I met some people from in Tonga. I met some people from Vanuatu. Got like pictures of them. New Caledonia, another place in Melanesia. Oh, great place, Fiji Islands. One of my favourite places, definitely out in the Pacific, Fiji Islands. Fijians are considered Melanesians. Now, you can see the story. 1500 BC, the first Fijians entered Fiji. Now, scientists claim that they came from Southeast Asia. But according to Fiji people, they claim that they came from Africa, Lake Tanganyika, Tanzania. And they are very proud peoples. Females usually have afros, as it's considered as beauty there. We need to get that over here, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Fijian people, they go back into the tribal mode sometimes, and the fire dancers, a lot of them.
Have they got a story, that they came, that actually traces them back to Africa? They're in Asia, and they know that they came from...
Do you mean...
Like, when did you know how long they've been there for, and when they came from Africa, roughly?
3,500 years ago, it's agreed upon that they came to Fiji, whether science or oral history. And they got to the First Landing Hotel. That was the hotel I stayed in, the First Landing. Now, scientists will, they'll go any country in the world and they'll give their views, won't they? And they're telling the indigenous people where you came from. That's what they do. So, according to the Fijians, their oral history remembers them saying that their migration from Africa. Now, you could say, did they go through Asia? Possibly. But how long did they stay in Asia for? Was it like, did they just sail straight, like, from Africa? Now, what I'm aware of is linguistic that tied them together as well. The name Tonga. There's other things. There's a lot of linguistic. We could probably get them all up and match all the linguistics. And the same with what we put up about Japan. So we're finding all in Asia, not just the Pacific, with connections linguistically to Africa, spiritually connected to Africa, religiously, every connection to Africa. So these are important things where...
And the scientists will only look at the DNA evidence, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They say, oh, they're not African because the DNA is different, or... But like I said, there's other things to look at, isn't he?
Yeah.
Language, relationships, and...
If you say silly things, it's like, for example, they'll say, for example, the Melanesians and the Africans are totally far related to each other. And what they do, they slot themselves in the middle, that they're closely related to us more than us are related to them in Papua New Guinea. And they say that to the Papua New Guinea, we're closer to yous, relation DNA-wise, than the African. So he just slot himself in the middle, where, to be honest, if we're walking down the street now and you're bumping into this fella, or he comes in the room and he's sitting there with us now, regardless of, I don't have to DNA test him, I can clearly look at him and see he's a black man, he's got an afro, his features, he just looks like someone who's left Africa, just like people born here, born in America, whatever. So I wouldn't need to sit there and DNA test them to think, these are people.
Exactly. Not to mention the religious and linguistic links as well.
So sometimes they use the DNA things and they can manipulate DNA. When I say manipulate, you can say things like, if they want to concentrate on a country and hide something, they might decide to say, well, let's concentrate on the people who entered the country 1,000 years ago, because they know there was a European migration that invaded, or the Arab migration. So sometimes you like to focus on the dates where... How do you know sometimes? Because we're not the people doing the test and all that. So we've got to, be the ones in with this power. Do you know what I'm saying? And then, as you can see, the Fijian culture, the part of an Austronesian expansion. But at the same time, was this expansion an African connection as well through Madagascar? This is a chief going back into the 1898, Boer chief. Most authorities agree that the people came into the Pacific from Southeast Asia through the Malay Peninsula. Here, the Melanesian and Polynesian mix creates a highly developed society. Yeah. Okay. Tonga. Now, we're crossing into Polynesia now. So, Polynesia, the many islands. Now, they come up with these names like, well, because the people might have been a bit lighter than Tonga, and throughout the last 200 years as well, they've been mixing with people from Asia who've been coming as migrants and that. So the change in the looks, especially tiny islands, when you're bringing large populations in, South Pacific Tonga, little cool kids there. And that's the triangle, the big islands, the Polynesia, of course. This is, I went to visit this 3-step pyramid in Tonga. The historical monuments linked to the chiefly dynasties which ruled over the island centuries. So the royal burials. This was an interesting one of his, Stonehenge. There's a legend in Polynesia which says that if one passes through the Stonehenge thing, well, it's not called Stonehenge, by the way. It's called Maui. But if you translate it, we call it Stonehenge here. So as you can see, it's very, from what I got off them, because I got a proper talk with the people there, the chiefs and that, and he explained that stuff like, well, if you stood in there, it's good luck. For example, the king used to kneel, or the chiefs, because they felt that they can be protected from assassination attempts that later could come on their life. So basically, people in the ancient world would do things that they felt is going to protect them. I stood there myself, thought I'm going to experiment. Polynesian deities. You know, they have all their deity roles and that, you know. You got a pig god, god of creation, growth, creator god, god of heavens, trickster. Each your tribe, we got the trickster. You know, you got to be careful of the trickster. That's an interesting one as well. Many tricksters around us, isn't he? So don't be fooled. Yeah. Samoa. So I like to look at the darker skinned Samoans because they like to always show like different. It's the same thing when people want to show the Hollywood look or the commercial look. They like to pick the lightest people to make people feel comfortable, but it doesn't make a difference. You know, just let's get the truth out. Yeah. Darker skinned Polynesians because they always want to show the lighter ones. This is the Queen of Hawaii, Lydia. And that's obviously the name in Hawaii. You can pronounce the name. 1850s, they were Hawaiians were dark-skinned people before people came in from other places. Native Hawaiian people, you know. Okay. First inhabitants of Hawaii, 4th to the 7th century AD from the Marquise Island, followed by the second wave from Tahiti during the 9th to 10th century. Now, the Hawaiians have an oral history themselves where they say there was people there, black dwarfs, who were there before them. So I'm happy I can kind of deal with the science. Because I read the science because you've got to challenge something. But I'm happy I'm also have the oral side of me. And that oral side comes from my own childhood as my oral history and understanding what oral history is. And some things you can take literally, some things were just mythical. You got to separate the two, you know. Hawaii, you get. Yeah, the Hawaiian family and practice of harmony and spiritual alignment. Ohana. Yeah. Afros. Pure Hawaiians. Not like the newest ones now. Yeah. Balancing. Much of the foundation of ancient Hawaiian spirituality and morality consisted of the meditation, negotiation, actualization of pronoun, you know, daily life within respect their effects on the mana kanaka. Tahiti. Now, Tahiti speak French. I would hope to go Tahiti soon. Religion and myth before the arrival of the Europeans. You know, peoples of Micronesia practice a variety of form, polytheism, and belief in more one deity. You know, Micronesia, that was an interesting place. Parts of Tahiti again, yeah. You know, spirits might be called on a variety of reasons, including diagnosis and cure of illness, success in fishing, control of weather, courage in battle, and still navigation to ensure goodwill of the spirits. Okay, I have to go read it all. Easter Islands, this is definitely a mysterious place. A mysterious how some civilization just end as well. You know, 1200 AD. So not that long ago, but very definitely more research needs to be done on Easter Islands, but more research needs to be done on the Pacific in general anyway. Now, if you look at Easter Islands is on the map, you'll know that it's right by South America, Chile. So when people say they don't believe people came to ancient America from the Pacific, you got all the way from Southeast Asia all the way into the Pacific, not too far away from Chile, and you couldn't get to America. No, this is
mix whatever did it, didn't
yeah. But it's a common sense thing, though. If someone could see fair all the way from one end of the Pacific to the other end, also they went through the Indian Ocean, what makes you believe when they landed in Easter Islands, they couldn't get to South America, which is close?
Would have been simple.
This is common sense, and we must apply common sense because some of the scientists don't have common sense, some of them. They haven't grown up with the right people. They've grown up with just posh people or grown up with schmuck people. Not all of them, I'm just saying that's why they come with that. They can't have a conversation with a normal person. Micronesia, Yap Islands, you know, the part I went to was Guam, but I would have loved, I met a few people from Yap. They get treated terrible in Guam. You know, treated good at all. Yeah, Micronesia, the small islands. And they were calling the darker skinned ones, they call them Micronesians. And the lighter ones, they called them the Chimaras. And it was just like, it started to do my head. And because the Chimaras, they're the second class. The first are the Americans that are there, they're the rulers. Then the mixed ones want to look down at someone, so they'll look down at the darker ones. And it's just conquer and divide. You know, definitely I want to go Yap Islands one time. Micronesia, darker skinned ones, because you have to go certain parts, you see, because they're trying to breed them out or move them out. Yeah. So that's it. We're going to go into, we've got our last little slide coming up now. Anything else you want to ask, Tens, before we go to
No, that's
the
fine.
next one? Yeah. So we're just going to do a quick one of America. This is actually a short one. It's only actually 30 slides because I didn't want to make this too massive, do you know what I mean? Yeah, so anything you want to ask, Tens, before we get started?
No, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it then. Okay. Let's get on this one then. Okay. Let the slideshow begin. Okay, Indigenous Peoples Americas, you know. What some people want to consider America, the Americas are a whole continent. Some people say South America, North America, you know, so whatever you want to deal with. Native American tribes, they talk about ones who were, you know, they like to show that the Native Americans were not dark-skinned people, they were lighter-skinned. That's what they like to show, but I want to show, you know, melanated peoples. That's what we're here to do. So I'll show you the darker-skinned Native Americans, you know. Okay. Creation stories. Originally, people lived in the sky. Big tree uprooted and created a hole that pregnant woman fell through. She landed on flock of waterfall, who placed the turtle's back. Animals placed peace on the earth of the back of the turtle and continue to grow, forming the turtle. Oh, it's some deep stories. You can just go on, you know. But I don't ignore creation stories because you don't know why they say these things. What's behind these so-called myths?
Was that oral tradition that was it, or did these have writings?
Both. They are both, yeah. Yeah, typically Native American creation myths, like we just said, explain the relationship between humans and nature, or explain unnatural events, have ordinary human character can you say good? That be good or evil animals characterized. But to me, I just see one of the same things as around the world.
Yeah.
And this is what makes me connect to it more. South American people, there's different parts. Black Seminoles, I believe they would have been in Florida. Florida, the Black Seminoles. Now, some say that they are the original people there. Then some say, well, what it was is the Africans mixed with the local Native American people and formed together because they had to fight off the enemy. So that's one version. And then, but we're aware of Africans in the Americas. A lot of the time, you have to go to black and white pictures, unfortunately. Crow tribes, man. You know, this definitely... Now, Lucia, we mentioned many times in Brazil. The Lucia woman, Portuguese pronunciation, named for Upper Paleolithic. Now, this skeletal of the Paleo-Indian, because what they do, they use the native Indian, but they use the Paleo. So basically, the much older one who entered the Americas, who was found in a cave in Brazil. Being to Brazil, some archaeologists originally thought that young women may have been part of the migrant wave of immigrants prior to the ancestors of today's Amerindians. Today's Amerindians, so before them, so they would have been, because the Mongoloid type, who were the later comers, Olmec civilizations, you know, some say the Olmecs 1500 BC, some of them are 1400 BC, some can be 1200 BC, but I believe that it's much more deeper than that. Okay, the Olmecs, which thrived along Mexico Gulf Coast about 1200 to 400 BC, was the first major Mesoamerican culture. The Olmecs were extremely talented artists, and their most lasting artistic contribution is without a doubt the enormous sculptured heads they created. These sculptures have been found on a handful of archaeological sites, including La Venta and San Lorenzo. Originally thought to depict gods or ball players. Which one would you think it is? Depicting gods or ball players?
Gods.
Okay, this is an interesting Olmec though. As you can see, our brother Renault Rashidi, the forgotten unknown Olmecs. Now look at these faces. These were called, is this one called Montenegro? There was a name that they give it. But these are different heads. You know, you can see his hairline on this one. About six, now this is saying 1600 BC, a little up before 15. Peru, you know, Peru, definitely would like to go Peru one time. You know, very spiritual people, Peru. And I want to go and see all their ruins and all their architectures and stuff. Choco people of Colombia. Now, Afro-Colombian and indigenous people who live in harmony with the lands and the rivers. So some of these are mixed with the indigenous people and form their own tribes. Choco people of Colombia. And probably if you dig deep into places like Colombia, you know, Colombia's got a large black population, which they don't seem to depict much on TVs. They show you a lot of the lighter skinned ones. So that's why it's always important for us to do the opposite and show the oldest people, you know. Venezuela, place I went myself. Now, you will see a lot of light-skinned Venezuelans, but a lot of dark-skinned Venezuelans. Many, many dark-skinned Venezuelans, you know. I don't be fooled by that. Met loads of them. Suriname, indigenous people of Suriname. And Suriname, next to Guyana, not far from Brazil. So there's still people there. Now, some people say, well, because of these censorships and you strip people's rights away, whether or not they are indigenous or they mix with people, they don't have no rights. You don't get them rights. It's, you know, Argentina, you know, how the people get treated down there in Argentina. You know, many Africans down there have been treated real messed up. Panama. I'd love to go Panama. You know, this is a place I'd love to go right through this Central America. You know, like them places and that. Ecuador people, you know, they're still fighting for their rights, though. All of them, you know, whether it's illegal loggers, people just coming in, polluting their places and that. So it's a big fight. So, you know, they're all crying out. Indigenous people of Guyana. Now, my great-granddad's born in Guyana, you know, so there's traces of, like, certain indigenous peoples there, still alive. The Amazon rainforest is there. Dominica, a place I'd like to go. Not Dominican, this is Dominica. So Dominica, these are peoples, the indigenous peoples, Caribs, you know, or some called Marowaks. But they're just different shades of people. Some have mixed with local people, could have been. But it's good to show different peoples. Trinidad, one where me other granddad from. There's Amerindians there, still there to this day. And I was actually supposed to meet up with the chief in Trinidad. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. I was meant to go. I had the appointment and everything, but I didn't want to leave the people who I was traveling with, family members, and, you know, so a bit more to it. Okay, as you can see, you know, Amazon people, just in harmony with nature, spiritual. Now, indigenous chief, you know, of Brazil. Now, he's a person that he's trying to fight against all this logging and all this, you know, because the artists, like, treat, if you look how much of the Amazon rainforest has been shut down from ancient times, you know, Aztecs, stone carving or procession of warriors in the Middle Age of 1325, you know, so around 1325, the Aztecs, and it's actually a late civilization, Aztecs. It's no young civilization. Okay, Mayan art. Now, the reason why I've showed you this, because I want to show you that the Mayans were dark-skinned people. The more you go back, and it's very important to show that. Amazing art, that. Mayan peoples, I encountered a lot of Mayan peoples to this day, and yet they looked similar to these people I encountered. I did see the odd dark-skinned one, but at the end of the day, you know what, Spanish have mixed with these people as well, remember, Spanish. You know, can't let them off the hook. And the architecture in Mexico, some of the pyramids, I just thought it was... this is why I got to give big up Mexico as far as preserving their history. They're not stupid people. You know, they're very clued up. And I did mention them about 2012. You know, when he just said, it's just a new beginning. It's not the end. It's a new beginning. You know, so that was important. Yeah, so we've ended the slideshow out now. So that's come to the end of the slideshow. If you want to ask anything you want to ask, Terrence?
One quick question on these Americas. You got black organizations in America today who say that they were there before the slave trade.
Okay.
Africans came in. You know what I mean? Like you laid the Moorish temple. What do you think? What do you think about that theory?
Okay. So you repeat that question. Sorry.
They're basically saying they're not African. They're indigenous Americans.
Okay, the more this. Okay, yeah.
It's not. It's not just them. There's a couple of people who say, you know, and there's an argument going on, like, you know, because some people say no, we weren't, and then we've got other people's.
Here's how I look at it. Right, depending on the person talking about it, some people are genuine with what they say and done the research, and then there's some people who are just anti-African, and the anti-African come from mental slavery, which was the result of from slavery. So they want to take on something other than being African. So if they reached out and started actually learning how great Africans were, their history, then they'd want to embrace Africa more. But they don't want to do that. So unfortunately, there was many African migrations that came into America. But what happens it's like Lucia, we've seen in Brazil. If you actually watch that documentary, right? If you actually watch that documentary, it's shown you, it goes deeper into it goes into the caves. It shows you depictions of very old archaeology, and they knew this is the original people, like Lucia, dark-skinned people. So then they looked a little later on. So they knew the older stuff, they were hunting things like armadillos or whatever, something that looked like an armadillo, extinct mammals possibly. So then when they looked at the artwork later, they noticed that there's a new set of people coming in now are looking different to them. And it's showing you somebody, possibly a Mongoloid type, this is how they described it, killing an Aborigine on the picture. So these things are just like in ancient Egypt, where it showed you if someone's invading, they're going to put you on the wall. You come and bother us, we're putting you on the wall so everyone knows you lie, they'll draw you. You see like the Hyksos getting chased out. And that's what people do, draw you to let you know, well, we didn't have cameras then, so we couldn't take a picture. So draw the best of their abilities to recognize who the invader is. But we did have many, many black people go to America. But what would have happened is the tiny pockets of surviving populations, which the Mongolian type, the Mongoloid race, there was too many of them keep coming in, wave after wave after wave, year after year, termites just coming in. So there's that many coming in. And you can look at the population of what's the Mongoloid race right now. This is probably the largest population in the world, the Mongoloid race. So they've expanded and they've conquered black empires as they're expanding. So basically, as far as people say, no, we are ancient Americans, we're the original people wherever we go on the planet, but I don't like when it's done in a way of like you're trying your best not to be African.
Yeah.
And that's down to the metal slavery. But I do believe there's many migrations into the Americas, and yeah, possibly the Moors did show them how to navigate. That's not a problem. But the Moorish Science Temple is completely different than the Moors of 7-11. You know, don't compare them within two different time periods. And the same way you can't compare the Moors 7-11 who got kicked out in 1491 by Columbus, because they would have been mixing heavily.
Been there with Europeans, haven't they, for a long time?
Yeah. So you got to really expand your mind on this, though. And, you know, is there anything else there before?
No, that was it, really, for the Americas. It's been, a hot topic for debate, hasn't it, over the last few months or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't know if they're native or if they came in. I think they came in like everyone else, just don't know when. You know what I mean? There's been many migrations, so.
Many. And that's how you got to think, you know, what's going to stop people migrating, you know. But I've really enjoyed this conversation, this slideshow anyway. And we're going to finish off now anyway, if you want to say your last words anyway.
Just hope you do another series of Disovering, Series 5, and get some good guests on, and see where we go from there.
That's it, yeah. Well, this is James Diboe, Disovering, Season 4, dedicated to original peoples. And me, Terrence, we are here today for the slideshow. And thank you all. Peace, Terrence.
Thanks.